All right. Good morning, everyone. We have the privilege of studying the Haftarah, not for Mishpatim, but for Parashat Shekalim. For the special, we begin now 4 special weeks of special Haftarot in preparation for Pesach. Excuse me. 4 special weeks in preparation for Pesach. The first of which is not really preparation for Pesach, preparation for Nisan and what Pesach means. The first of which is Parashat Shekalim, is the special reading about the half shekel that all Jewish males are obligated to give. It is read the Shabbos before the Adar that precedes Nisan, right? So it's the Shabbos before the second Adar of the year, or the only Adar of the year, as is the case this year. And it's not really for Adar. You think there are connections between Shekalim and Purim, but the main point of this is a reminder of the fact that in the beginning of Nisan, the collection for the new year's sacrificial fund started, right? All the communal sacrifices were given on behalf of the entire Jewish people, which meant every Jew had a role in the ownership of that sacrificial fund. And the way they funded that is everyone gave a half shekel, a half shekel's worth of silver. That's how also they did a census, but that money was all set aside and put towards the temple for everyone. And so in preparation for the reminder, it would begin Rosh Chodesh Adar. The question is a little bit, but is this a reminder about the reminder, or commemorating the fact that beginning Rosh Chodesh Adar, they used to remind people to give your half shekel? Or is this actually a reminder of the whole process? A little bit of a difference between what that is. I'm not going to get into that right now, but either way, it's a reminder of that fact. And so what that means is the maftir this week is replaced with the special reading which comes from the beginning of Parshat Truma. No, not Truma, Kisisa, which comes from Kisisa. Truma is what we were learning at Mincha. And then the Haftarah, obviously, as we well know the rule, the Haftarah follows the last reading that we read from the Torah, which will be the Parashat Shekalim, the part about the dedication to the temple, and therefore we read the Haftarah for Parashat Shekalim, which for us is 2 Kings, Malachim Bet, 12 through 17. Everyone with me so far? Awesome. We've talked about this in the past. This is a Haftarah we read every year. We've talked about it in the past. We've talked about it in preparation for these. Hold on, I'm just opening it up in mine. And what we're going to do today is sort of look at the other parts of it and try to talk about other points. The story brings us all the way to the king Yehoiada. I'm sorry, to the king Yoash, excuse me. We begin our Haftarah with the Svardim begin in a slightly other place. We begin in chapter Yud Bet, chapter 12. And the story began a little bit before, just as some background. So you have the king, Yoash, is one of the youngest kings to ever be to rule in Judah. As the first line says, Ben Shiva Shanim, Yoash b'malcho. Yoash is 7 years when he starts ruling. Why is he ruling at that point? So essentially what happens is Yoash is the son of 2 kings, of the king, obviously, the heir to the throne. The king, his father, I'm forgetting his name for a second, it'll come back to me in a moment, is killed by Yehud, the king of Israel, who is related to the union of Izebel and Achav. And essentially what happens is Avtalia, who is the grandmother involved, tries to like kill out everyone involved. In the process, decides to sort of overthrow the king, and assert her reign, right? So she basically kills out all of her descendants, and the Kohanim, the priests, are worried that that this is obviously they're destroying the leaders of Beit David, the Davidic line, and so they take baby Yoash and they hide him in the temple for 7 years. So basically, the mother of Yoash's, I remember, Yoash's father's name is Achizyahu. Achizyahu dies, right? And Avtalia, his mother, decides that she's going to rule, so she kills out all of the other descendants in her family. They come and they take Achazyahu's brother, Achazyahu's sister, and the son of Achazyahu, Yoash, and they hide him from the house of the king so that he won't be killed and so that his grandmother can't kill him. And so he hides in the temple. This is right before, this is chapter 11, verse 3, right before Vayi Ita Beit Hashem, they hid for 7 years in the house of Hashem. And Avtalia is the king, is the queen, reigns over the king, over the land. This is all the forerunner to our Haftarah. In the 7th year, Yehoyada, who is the Kohen Gadol, who's in charge, sends essentially to all the people still loyal to the king and to the Davidic line, and they basically make a pact, and they coronate. At the ripe age of 7, he's ready to be the king, so he becomes the king. And Avtalia hears what's going on, and she sees that there's a king standing in the court with all the accoutrements of being the king, but Tikra Kesher Kesher, and she cries treason, treason, and they capture her and they leave her out, and she's put to death outside of the temple. Right? That's sort of the run up to our Torah, chapter 12. Ben Sheva Shanim Yoash B'Mako. Yoash is 7 years old when he's the king, and it's the 7th year of Yehud Malach. Yoash's reign begins in the 7th year of Yehud, and he reigns for 40 years in Yerushalayim. B'Shem Imo, and his mother's name we get right over here as well. Right, and what happens? Essentially, right, Yoash is a whole ripe 7 years old. So who's really running the kingdom initially? The Kohen Gadol, who took care of him, Yehoyada. Verse number 3, Vayas Yoash Hayashar Beinei Hashem Kol Yamav. He did everything right in the eyes, or he did right in the eyes of God all of his days. Asher Horahu Yehoyada HaKohen. As Yehoyada Kohen instructed him. There's a little bit of question here. Does that mean all the days that Yehoyada was instructing him, or all the days he followed as he was instructing him? The difference here would be what happens after Yehoyada dies and Yoash is still the king. I'm not going to get into that right now, but there's one flagrant. He doesn't meet the dream team. He's not an MVP king. He's just a good king. Why? Rak habamot lo saru. He didn't get rid of the high places, the shrines to God. This was the unlicensed sacrifices, but not to idolatrous, but to God. That he didn't take. He didn't end that, and that was a problem, right? Essentially, you have 4 levels of Jewish kings. You have excellent kings, best type of kings: King David, Hiskiyahu, Yoshiyahu. Great kings who did great things, and not just they did everything. They were the best. Then you have good kings. Yoash is a good king, right? He's a good king. He does right. He's not wicked, but he doesn't get rid of the bamot like he's supposed to. Then you have bad kings that just enable the people to continue to do idolatry. And then you have terrible kings who introduce idolatry, who push the people to worship idols, to move away from God, to stray from what they should be doing. So in the scheme of things, he is middle of the pack, top of the pack, right? What happens? And obviously this is where the connection to our parsha comes in, or our special parsha, Shekalim. What does Yoash say? It's time. Kol kesef hakidoshim asher yuvad beit Hashem kesef over ish kesef nafsho erko kol kesef asher ya'aleh alev ish lavi beit Hashem. All of these monies that are being brought to the temple, all different types of donations, sacred donations, equivalents of people, the kesef nafsho, or the whatever, I felt like I wanted to give a donation to the temple. Yukach lahem hakohanim meish ish makiro. They should take from each of these people. V'hem yisku et bedek habayit l'chol asher yimatzei sham badak. They should fix the temple. The temple was run down. The temple was destroyed. They should make the necessary repairs. Right? So he decrees, take the money, use the money, make sure, allocate the money so that you get it done for what needs to have the temple. But and it was in the 23rd year of Yoash's reign, right? So this is a long time later. The Kohanim didn't make the necessary repairs. Did they embezzle the money? No, we don't know. But they're not, what did they do with the money? Could be they just sat there. They didn't do anything with it. He said to them, why aren't you repairing the temple? Now that you have it, don't take the money from the benefactors anymore. We have a new system that money is going to be dedicated, donated to repair the temple. And what do the Kohanim say? Are they upset? No, they agree. They don't want to take it anymore. They're not going to accept the money anymore and not to make the repairs. No big loss because they weren't making the repairs to begin with, right? So what does Yoyadah do? And what does Yoash do? Vayikach Yoyadah HaKohen Aron Echad. He creates the first pushka, creates the first stucco box. He takes a box, Vayikov Chor B'Dalto, and he makes a hole in its lid. Vayitenoto Eitz Al Mizbeach Miyamim, and he puts it next to the altar on the right. Ish Beit Hashem, and when someone came to the house of God, Natnu Shama Kohanim Shomrei Asaf Ekol Kesef Hamuva Beit Hashem. Someone gave the coin a check for whatever, they put it in the box. Right, it's sort of like my life. Someone comes to a shul, they want to make a donation for a yard site. They say, Rabbi, I want to write a check to the shul. I say, either put it in the second box, put it in the box in the courtroom, or give it to me, and I'll put it in the box in the courtroom. Right? That's the way it works. I don't take it and then go buy the repairs. There's a process, a board, a structure. That's what gets invented in our parsha, in our Haftarah. What happens when the money fills up in the stucco box? The Kohen Gadol and the treasurer of the king would come, and they would count the money, and they would put it towards the budget line item of repairing the temple. Right? It's like a modern day Haftarah for our community. That new kesef. They would give the money that was delivered Yedei Osei HaMelacha to the people who were doing the work, in charge of preparing and structuring and fixing the temple. They gave it to the Chorshei Ha'etz, the carpenters, the laborers, Ha'osim Beit Hashem, that were doing the work in the house of God. Right? They did it for the maintenance contractors and the air conditioning ACAV guys, and it's the same thing. And they gave it to the masons and the stone cutters and the stone hewers, everything they paid, to strengthen the house of God. For any other expenditure that might be made in repairing the house in the temple. Lo Yaseh Beit Hashem Sipod Kesef Mizrakei Kesef Hatzrotzrot, Kol Klei Zahav, Klei Kesef, Minat Kohanim, Minat Kesef, Hamuva Beit Hashem. But they didn't make silver bowls, silver basins, silver trumpets. No silver vessels or gold vessels were made from this money because Kilo Samachad Nitnu Vichisku Bo Beit Habayit. It wasn't made to dedicate a Kiddush cup for the shul or a Havdalah set for the temple or fancy new Sidurim. It was made to dedicate the repairs of the actual house of the temple, right? So the money was properly allocated, properly aligned. Well, this is the best line, my favorite line at the end over here. What happens at the end? This is believable, although I wouldn't set up a structure like this also. Below yechashvu et ha'anashim asher nanu et ha'kesef al yadam latei lo osem lacha ki be'emunah hem osim. No checks. They didn't have like invoices provided back and forth to the people who delivered the services because they dealt with be'emunah. Honestly, kesef hasham, the kesef chatat, the money for the hasham offering and the guilt offering. Lo huva beit Hashem kohanim yayu. Those funds didn't get mushed into this pot. They got kept separate. That went to the Kohen, right? So what do we have over here? We have 3 stages. You have Yoash becomes king. Then Yoash says, you know what we need to do? We need to strengthen. We need to repair the temple. The Kohanim take a crack at that, at being the repair committee. They're not really good at being the house committee. And so Yoash says, what new? You haven't done anything yet. What's going on? And they say, you're right. Give it to someone else. And so a new structure comes in place where the Kohen Gadol and the king's sofer, the king's treasurer or counter, comes and administers the funds. You know, it's every shul needs a Lee Goldman that can administer grants, right? That's what this is, right? To make sure that the quotes are coming in, that the people are doing the work, and this, that. Otherwise, the money would just sit there and no one would use it. That's what this is, right? That's what this is. And that's what we have. So that's Haftarah. That's our pizza. I want to make a couple of points, and then we're going to end because there's a groundbreaking at Nija, which I have to get to. I have to put on my tie and my jacket, but I want to make a few points. Number one, it's an awesome story, right? It's literally like, some people see this as like, you know, just pedestrian details, but anyone who is knee deep in the way nonprofits or definitely shuls, which are, you know, microcosms of the temple operate, there's so much resonance in this Haftarah. Number two, it's fascinating on the Pshat level, 16 and 17, the last 2 verses, this idea that no real checks or balances were kept. That is not the practice that Halakha or the Torah envisions us to do, right? This is sort of an extra and beyond. They were so well trusted that no one needed to do that, but really, we understand both codified in Shulchan Aruch that anytime someone's in charge of community funds, they need to have additional oversight, that's essential. And we know Moshe models for us when he takes for the temple, to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, that he does a full, complete accounting for every dollar, every shekel, every gold and silver ounce that they use to build the temple. For the Mishkan, he accounts for, right? That's the model that is important. And I think it's sort of the impact of what perspective you're looking at. As the person spending the funds, you should make sure that you have an accounting, that everything is done properly, that there's oversight. As the people who should be clamoring for the oversight, if they have such a strong trust, and they don't need to ask for the oversight. But anyone in that role, I think they definitely should be doing that. That's number 2. Number 3, obviously, we understand a tacit connection to our special Parsha. It's about donations to the temple. But if you dive a little deeper, there are a lot more than meet the eye. Number 1, this is the bridge. Imagine the time of the temple when you had to give your half shekel piece. So you read a portion of the Torah that talks about dedicating, donating to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle. What's the connection then to that day and age, dedicating, donating to the temple? Our Haftarah echoes the tzivoy, the command in the Torah before the temple is even conceived of. Two, and refers it to the temple, number one. Number two, we actually see a structure. How many half shekels do we give on the day before Purim in commemoration of this practice? 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Thank you, Cindy. 3, right? 3. Or did you do 4 and just got cut off on the side? 3, exactly, 3. So how many, why 3? So in the Parsha you'll listen out to this week, it says in the special reading, it says Truma 3 times, alluding to 3 times. That there are essentially sort of 3 types of donations. Now, and this is true as well. There's the Truma for the altar. There's the Truma for the sockets of the Mishkan, which are the one-time gift, sort of the capital, the building fund. And then you have the Truma for the maintenance fund, the upkeep, the Bedek Habayit. Our Haftarah also we have an allusion to 3 types of gifts. Right at the beginning, if you recall, chapter 12, verse 2, verse 5, Vayomer Yoasha Kohanim, O Kesef Asher Yuva Beit Hashem, all the money, the donations that come to the temple, Kesef over, Ish Kesef Nafshot Arko, Kol Kesef Asher Allah Alibo, Ish Lavi Beit Hashem. So you have 3 kesefs, 3 types of donations here as well. So there's that parallel between the 3 types. And again, any donation that someone wants to make that is over, that is sanctified, that is kesef kedoshim, which is holy, right? That is alludes to the sacrificial fund that paid for the korbanot, for the holy sacrifices. Kesef nafsho erko, someone who wants to pay an equivalent of a person to the temple. And then just the general maintenance, kol kesef asher yaleh al lev ish, whatever you want to give, right? There are different types of gifts that you give. And that becomes as well these three forms. The other piece that just I think is important to note based on the sub-theme here, which is the Kohen, right? The hero of this story is not the Kohen, right? I say that with heavy heart as a Kohen, right? The Kohen is not the hero here, right? If they were, they would have done it, right? The Kohen is, I would say, the villain, but they're not the hero, right? The Kohen is tasked with doing this. They don't really do it. They step back. Other people do it, right? Yehuda, Sofer, and the workers are the heroes, right? What is that? What message is that? When you're an Israelite and you approach the temple and you see the Kohen doing all the sacrificing and all the service, it's easy to sort of step back and say, I know I pay for this, but I'm not really core to its operations, right? I'm the in-law paying for my children, right? Right? That's not the structure that we want. And so what we have over here is a frame that sees giving money, not just because it's important to give money to support these institutions, but in itself as a spiritual act, And when money and tzedakah is given from that perspective, it connects you. Fundamentally, the job of the Kohen is not funding. That's for everyone else. That's for the people. The upkeep of this temple is the job of the average Jew and the political leader of the Jewish people. Building the house of God and maintaining the house of God, you would think should devolve to the Kohen, and it does not. It devolves to the individual person. The Kohen, right? Don't think the non-Kohen can't contribute. The Kohen's function is purely functional, right? They're like the custodians in some ways. They do work in the temple, but the main vision center, the main people who steer the direction of these pieces is really the non-Kohen. And that money, that finances, create a deep financial commitment, which can be also a deep spiritual commitment, which highlights and elevates the role of giving the half shekel, not just to funding the new fund that opened for the 20, the 5, 7, 8, 3 fund for sacrifices, but is actually a much deeper connection to literally buying the bricks of the temple, right? I'll just end with this notion. We talk sometimes of like every mitzvah is a temple, a brick in the temple. It's the idea of building the temple, right? That's exactly what the Haftarah is trying to frame for us as the dedication to the temple. When someone makes a donation to the temple, it's a brick for the temple, literally a physical brick that gets built. And don't worry, your money's not using to buy nicer equipment for the Kohen. Don't worry, your money's not being used to buy gold candles so the Kohen has nice shears. That's not this money. This money is to build the foundation of the center point of the relationship between God and humanity, God and the Jewish people, the temple. Bedek Havayit. And who's going to do that work? Maybe the Kohen should have done it, but they couldn't do it. It's almost like divine. They couldn't rise to the occasion. It needed to be the Sofer, the king, the other people who will rise to this moment and to do that for us. So I'm going to stop here. Let's do a quick review, and then we'll take questions. Number one, we read through the story, the sort of the gory, bloody story that precedes our story of how Yoash becomes king. He's hidden, becomes king. He's a good king, but not the best king, right? Better than some, not as great as the best. And then we read this story, which is essentially a financial capital campaign or revitalization, renovation campaign to help secure the temple. The Kohen is initially sort of brought into doing that and isn't able to. And at the end of the day, a different structure is created that it lays in the lay side. We noted, number one, this is the bridge from the Mishkan to the temple. There are the three types of sacrifices, of trumot, of gifts that are given in the Haftarah and in the Parsha. And as we noted, perhaps it's not coincidental that the Kohen can't step up to the task, but really it is a symbol, a story that reminds each and every Jew their essential role in being able to build the temple, build that brick, contribute financially, which is a spiritual connection as well, to exactly building that centerpiece of their Jewish community, which is the temple. And that's why we read that. And last but not least, we also observe and witness the invention of the pushka for the first time and its use in the Jewish community. I hope Yehoyada Cohen got a nice copyright for that and continues to collect royalties for the thousands of years that the pushka has had good use. We'll stop here and we'll take any questions.
Yeah, Rabbi, I know you're